how much do I actually need to retire? Now, that's a question that people are dying to know the answer to. And sometimes you just need two basic pieces of information. Wait, it can't be that simple, right? Well, let's talk about it in this video. First piece of information you need is your monthly expenses. So you pop over to your Excel sheet or to your budgeting app, find that number, and then times that by 12 to get your annual expenses. Now that you have your annual spending, use the 4% rule of thumb, and I'll explain why it's a rule of thumb and not an absolute rule later on. So stay tuned to find out approximately how much you need to accumulate by multiplying your annual spending by 0.04 because it's 4%. So let's use an example to make things clearer. Let's say you spend around $3,000 monthly. Let's multiply that number by 12 to get your annual spending of 36,000. Then you apply the 4% rule of thumb to find your financial independence number, which is $900,000. So here are two more examples for comparison. So let's say for the first one, you spend a little bit less, you spend around $2,500 a month, then you need approximately $750,000. But if you're going a little bit wild and end up spending around $8,000 a month, that means you will end up needing $2.4 million before you can reach financial independence. So, why does the 4% rule of thumb even work? Well, that is because historically speaking, the stock market actually goes up by 8 to 10% a year. So, if you take out 4% out of that portfolio, that means you'll still have approximately 4% left in there. This will ensure that your money doesn't lose its value because the inflation rate goes up at about a rate of 3% a year. So theoretically, your money can last you forever. Or, as long as the world doesn't get overrun by zombies, then at that point, I think we got bigger problems to worry about than how many coins we got in our pockets. So, for this equation to actually work, you need to have a good investment portfolio. So, this will look like having a healthy mix of broad based, low cost index funds with a mix of stocks and bonds. Because these index funds track the stock market return that the 4% rule of thumb is based on. Some good examples of stock index funds could be like the Vanguard Total Market Index funds like VTSAX or VTI, and some good bond market index funds could be the Vanguard Total Bond Market Index funds, which is BND. Experts usually recommend a mix in the portfolio from around 90% stocks to 10% bonds, all the way to 60% stocks and 40% bonds. Well, this will be determined by your life stage. So, if you are a young adult like myself, probably a growth portfolio would suit you better. So, sometimes that could range from around 100% stocks to maybe around 80% stocks. So, 0% bonds, all the way up to 20% bonds. So now, if you're able to sleep a little bit better at night, knowing approximately how much money you need to accumulate in order to retire, make sure to subscribe for more content that will help you retire earlier than anyone else. Okay, so here is why the 4% is a rule of thumb and not an absolute law. And that is because this calculation is actually basing off of the assumption that we will all be retiring for about 30 years. So, that means if you accumulate your FI number way before 60 years old, that could mean that you need to withdraw less than 4% in order for your money to last you forever. Also, remember that this rule is based on the assumption that you want your money to last you forever. But if you do want to draw down on your wealth within your lifetime, you can draw up to 5, 6, or even 7% a year if you'd like. You can usually use a retirement calculator to find out approximately how much you can spend down in your retirement accounts every year so you have as little left as possible on the eventual day that you leave this earth and move to the great beyond. And I've linked the website that I've used down below. Here's the question of the day. What numbers has people thrown at you telling that you need this number to retire? Well, I've actually heard crazy ones like, for example, 2 million or even 10 million. So now that you know approximately how much you need for you to retire, go ahead and watch this video where I break down step by step on how to get there. So how do you retire in your 30s even if you're broke at 20? Thanks so much for hanging out today. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.